Hello, I'm Pastor Rick Hyme, the Bishop of the Northwest Synod of Wisconsin. And first of all, thank you for sharing your pastor with the greater church, with the Synod, and the leaders of your congregation as they gather an assembly at the University of Wisconsin Eau Claire to guide our Synod, but also to elect a new bishop. So thank you for that, and thank you for allowing me to be with you this morning in this way. And many other congregations are getting a typed out written thing like this, but I think this is a little better. So thank you. A few weeks ago, I got to go to Iowa to spend some time with my grandchildren. Evie is 8 and Devin is 4. And I had a few days where I could go down and be with them. And I hadn't seen them since Christmas. So my wife said, you need to go. And what was unique about this trip was I went by myself. And I realized that I'd never spent time with my grandchildren with just me. And it was different. It wasn't better, but it was different. But one of the things that was really different was when it came time for bed, one of Grandma's jobs when we are there is she goes to bed with Evie and reads. And reads a book or two, and it used to be she had to read the whole thing. And then eventually Evie was reading to her. But this time it was, Grandpa, you gonna come read with me? And I did. And I brought for her a book that two women in our synod both wrote and illustrated about the people in our companion synod in Malawi. And Evie, our granddaughter, has learned about Malawi through us, and she knows that Grandma and Grandpa went there a year ago. And she's grown up with little carved animals, elephants and hippopotamuses that she knows came from Malawi. And she, since she was little, has played with money that was from Malawi. And we've showed her pictures. But I was able to lie in that little twin bed of hers with her and to one night read the first half of the book and the next night read the second half of the book. But more importantly, to be able to stop reading and tell her stories about what the people of Malawi have meant to Grandpa and how I've learned from them and how they have allowed my faith to be greater than it ever would by itself. And I was able to talk to Evie about Grandpa's faith and how Grandpa believes and how important that is to me and how I said, Evie, I hope someday you can go to Malawi and you can learn from those people about Jesus like I have. And off went the lights. Well, I was driving home by myself, that long 5-hour drive on I-35. And I was thinking back to my grandma and grandpa, my grandma and grandpa Nelson, my mom's mom and dad, and realizing that we never had those moments. Now, first of all, they had 27 grandchildren. But also, they never talked to me about Jesus or their faith. I can't even tell you whether my grandpa went to church. I think he did. I know Grandma did because she had the circle come to her house and Ladies' Aid. But they never talked to me about what they believed and why they believed and why it made a difference in their life. And I wish they had. At our Synod Assembly, the theme of our Synod Assembly this year is called Growing Young. And it's built around this book, Growing Young, 6 essential strategies to help young people discover and love your church. And this is a good book, based on research done in churches all over the country. Some of those churches are just like yours. They could be big, they could be very small, they could be in a city, they could be very rural. But the thing they have in common is they have strategies that are helping their churches grow young, to reach out to the Evies, but especially to reach out to kids between the ages of 15 and 29. And what we're doing at the Synod Assembly this year, so ask your pastor, ask your deacon, ask your leaders when they come back, what did you learn? Because we're having 4 TED Talks. These are short 4 to 5 minute talks done by churches from around our synod, in larger towns, in little tiny towns, in the Northwoods, churches that are big, churches that are very small. But the thing they all have in common is these are churches that are growing younger. And they're going to share their story about what they've learned and to teach this to the other churches and the other leaders so they can take that back to help their churches grow young. In this book, they quote a man named Max Dupree, and he says this: "The first job of a leader is to define reality." The first job of a leader is to define reality. Here's the reality. In the churches across the Northwest Synod of Wisconsin, all across this country, we're not unique. 2 things. Church attendance is declining and congregations are aging. They're getting older. That's the reality. Now, how does that work when Jesus says, and you may have heard this in the readings today, where Jesus says about, let the little children come unto me. Or the Great Commission, go and make disciples of all nations, which I think if he said it today would not be about all nations especially, but it'd be go make disciples of all ages. When the reality is church attendance is declining and congregations are aging, that contradicts what Jesus tells us to do and to be. We have to ask ourselves tough questions. What did they find, the authors of Growing Young, as they went out and interviewed and studied churches all across this country? Here's the thing. As they engaged 15 to 29-year-olds, they found that every one of these churches was growing spiritually, growing emotionally, growing missionally, and sometimes numerically. Not always numerically, but sometimes. And it's important that that's last, because you do not grow young to get bigger. You grow young because it will change your church. It will change the people in your church. And they found that the young people in these churches had things that were in common. First of all, they felt like they were known in that church. And they didn't find that in many churches, even small churches. But the young people felt like people knew who they were and knew about them. And the young people, 15 to 29, and ask yourself, how many people are this morning, look around you, from the ages of 21 to 29 are in your church this morning. They felt like they were loved. How hard is that? To learn to know young people and to love them. These churches were innovative, and they had core commitments. The church I served before I was elected bishop was Central Lutheran in Chippewa Falls. And one of the 3 basic core commitments of that church, and it continues to this day, is we take care of our kids. And aside to that is, and their parents. We need to do that as a church, and it has to be at the very core of who we are. When I was elected bishop 5 years ago at the Synod Assembly, I remember speaking to the assembly before I was called, before I was elected to this office. And I said, this room is filled with parents and pastors who feel like failures. Because many of us raised our kids the way we were raised. My 2 daughters, they went to Sunday school every Sunday. They went to Bible school. They went to Bible camp. They went on youth trips in high school. They went to national youth gatherings. And it didn't work very well. Now, our oldest, Evie's mom, she goes to church. But frankly, I didn't know if that was going to happen. The younger one, our other daughter, says, well, she's not opposed to it, just hasn't happened yet. She's 32 years old. But I have hope. But what I know is how we were raised, with grandmas and grandpas who for many of us never talked about Jesus because that was the church's job. It doesn't work anymore. Our culture has changed. Our world has changed. And we as the church need to change who we are and how we equip one another. We need to resolve to grow young. You, in your church, need to resolve that we will grow young, and we won't stop until we figure out how to do it. And growing young takes everyone always. There's no halfway to this. Everyone has to buy into this, and you have to buy into it every day. Because what does it do? We know that churches that grow young are more vital, they have more energy, they do more service, they have more passion, they're more innovative, there's more money. Now, interesting, the money doesn't come from the young people and their parents, but it comes from people who are my age, 64, 65, 75, 85, 95, who see what their church is doing and they give more. Remember? Because they are into it always. Pastor Erwin McManus says this: healthy churches reach young people, and young people make churches healthier. Healthy churches reach young people, and young people make churches healthier. So this is my challenge for you as a bishop who in 4 weeks will no longer be your bishop, is to ask you to resolve to grow young, to do what needs to be done to reach people like my Evie. Because there's Evies in every church, in every town, in every community, in every family. And they're too precious. They're loved too much to not share with them this Jesus who has made a difference in your life, and the church that's made a difference in your life. Call your grandbabies, talk to your babies, and do what I did. Share the story so you might grow young and your church. Amen.